We've got a new Congress, and they've got some legislation queued up, but what do the people really want? What do they want coming out of this new Congress? Well, let's bring up some polling data on the top issues amongst independent voters specifically. Look at that. Culture of corruption at 75% is the top issue. Now, the other ones are also incredibly important as well. Social Security, Medicare, economy and jobs. Right kind of change is an interesting sort of vague statement, but healthcare and prescription, all of that. But they do put culture of corruption even above things like healthcare and jobs, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. And okay, well, I mean, culture is sort of a vague concept. What can you actually do about it? Would they want Congress, who they don't trust and don't like, to do anything about it? Well, if we bring up this next poll, you'll see that they do actually really want some legislation to try to reform this. Overwhelming support. I mean, that's 84% amongst independents. You're talking about 82% amongst all voters.
Well, here's my favorite part. So overall voters say 82%. Yeah, do something about the corruption. And the fact that, like, when Just Democrats, for example, ran on that issue, that was the only litmus test. You're not allowed to take corporate PAC money. We're going to run uncorrupted. The establishment was like, oh, that's funny. Like, really? You don't think that's a winning issue? That's unbelievably you don't think that's a winning issue. Once again, mainstream media living in alternative facts. No, corruption is the #1 issue in the country. But my favorite number was the 11%. 11% are like, nah, corruption's fine. No, yeah. And to be fair to them, it's not corruption or uncorruption. Well, that's why the 82% number is even more impressive. Do you think we should reform government ethics and control money in politics? And so they were specific enough. And so 11% go, no, don't control the money in politics. I think it's freedom when the Koch brothers buy all my senators and congressmen, right? And okay, but that's 11% of the country. That's a tiny, tiny minority. The overwhelming majority of the country says, yeah, of course it's corruption. Of course that's what it is.
So that's what they want, and we have an idea, we've had for some weeks actually, of what HR 1, the first bill out of this new Congress, will be, and it is complicated, it involves a lot of different things, but they really do get to the heart of those sorts of concerns. We'll go through some of the components and briefly comment on whether we think it's up to the task. But the first section is public financing of campaigns powered by small donations. The standout part of that would be, at least under one proposal, the federal government would provide a voluntary 6-to-1 match on donations for candidates for president and Congress up to $200. So a regular person who could donate $25 or $50 or $100 would have much more effective value, so that those people who are running for Congress and president don't necessarily need to go to wealthy people. They can appeal to the regular masses, us serfs and peasants. So that's a pretty significant change there as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually the best part of the law. Look, I think HR 1 is fantastic. I think it's a great start. You know me, I would have made it even tougher. But I'm not, today's not the day to nitpick, okay? Because this is super important. When you're given half a loaf, or in this case, look, you can think it's a quarter loaf, you can think it's 3/4 of a loaf. But the first question you should ask is, yeah, but what's the downside? And in this case, there is no downside. So go, yes, absolutely. Take whatever percentage of the loaf you think it is, and let's go forward. So it's a wonderful bill put forward, and credit where credit is due to Nancy Pelosi, to Democratic leadership, to the co-sponsors. And 6-to-1 is I think the best part, because it would make a huge difference, because it would mean that your donations are multiplied by 6. It would take you and make you 6 times as strong. Well, we love that. We want to empower people.
Yeah, and there's 2 other parts of that are really good. One is that means more people can actually run, because they don't need to find as much money. There will be sort of a matching of funding of 6-to-1, which is awesome. And the other thing that's actually in this bill, which usually this is the kind of stuff that'll get cut out, and hopefully it won't if it ever gets to a vote into the floor and goes through, is to prohibit the coordination between the super PACs and the money that's coming in amassed beyond that $200 minimum, or beyond whatever the contribution minimum is per person, from unduly influencing what happens to that individual candidate and that campaign. And if you can get both of those things in together, I think they're super powerful.
Yeah.
Unsuper PAC, but super powerful.
Exactly, and so somewhat related to this, also having to do with campaign finance, the bill would support constitutional amendment to end Citizens United, which again, that specifically does not go as far as we would like it to, but that would certainly be a nice step in the right direction. As you said, requiring super PACs and dark money political organizations to make their donors public and also not coordinate with the candidates. It would require disclosing any political spending by government contractors and slowing the flow of foreign money into elections by targeting shell companies. So the sort of, I guess, closed loop of companies that get in with the federal government, get these big contracts, take the money from the overblown contracts to then lobby the government for more contracts. This could hopefully fight against a bit of that.
Yeah, so all these provisions are good. The Disclose Act is good. Look, if you're asking, okay, so Cenk, what do you want? Why do you think this is half a loaf? Even though, again, it's a great start. Well, look, number one, an amendment. We're going to talk about that in a little bit because one was proposed, and that's also great news. But what would I want the amendment to do? Like the Disclose Act, it's fine. They can't get the Republicans to say yes, so it'll fail in the Senate. That doesn't mean they shouldn't do it. They should do it. They should pass it and then show that the Republicans are in favor of corruption. So that's I love it, right? But I would say end all private financing of elections. And Republicans, you're never allowed to complain about George Soros again if you vote for private financing of elections. That's what Soros does. He privately finances elections, as do the Koch brothers and the Mercers and Sheldon Adelson and Tom Steyer, both on the left and the right. Let's end it all. End it all. If they do private financing, they will work for private interests. If we do public financing, they'll work for public interest, and they have in the past. Don't buy the mythology that it's never been good in this country. And I love that in the amendment portion they mentioned Buckley v. Vallejo. Pre that decision, not Citizens United, but if you go back to 1976, we actually had a system that worked. And that's why part of the reason why we had economic booms. That's why we had great domestic legislation that protected us, Environmental Protection Agency, OSHA, and I could list Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. All that came about in an era where we did not have corruption, or certainly not at the industrial level that we have it now. Second thing I would do is end corporate personhood. So corporations are not people, my friend. They're just not. They're not human beings. They should have no constitutional rights. They should have legal rights, but not constitutional rights. And that's a very important distinction. So they didn't go anywhere near that here. And me finding out who is bribing them is a positive step, but I'd like to end the actual bribery.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on to areas of ethics, because again, that gets into the polling that we were talking about earlier. It would require the president and vice president to disclose 10 years of his or her tax returns. Candidates for president and vice president must also do the same. This seems like a weird inclusion because, look, I'll admit my data is only good up until a few years ago, but everyone had.
Except,
of course.
Except
so they're not
Donald
going to vote
Trump.
for this.
No. There's one other person, Bernie Sanders. I think that's why they put that in there.
Yeah?
Yeah, because why? Trump's not a candidate anymore. He's the president. They already said president. Why bother saying candidate? So they can get Bernie Sanders tax returns.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I get it, but that's okay. They should get his tax returns.
And to be fair, I think he'll give them.
Yeah.
Other areas of ethics, stopping members of Congress from using taxpayer money to settle sexual harassment or discrimination cases. I don't know how that was ever legal.
I know,
Sit down with a regular person. Hell, go to a cafe in Iowa. They love doing that. And talk to a regular person. Do you think they should be able to use your money to settle their sexual harassment cases? No one would understand that, but thankfully they'll be changing that. Also giving the Office of Government Ethics the power to do more oversight and enforcement, put in stricter lobbying registration requirements. That's something.
Yeah. By the way, none of these are going to happen, right? Because he said they're going to come into effect, and I just want to be clear about that. It's still wonderful that they're putting it forward and putting the Republicans on the spot, but Mitch McConnell has said this is a non-starter. I love corruption. I have no interest in ethics. I will not even discuss this in the Senate.
Exactly. Now, in the area of voting, they would create new national automatic voter registration that asks voters to opt out rather than opt in. Early voting, same-day voter registration, and online voter registration would also be promoted. So those are all good moves.
That's another reason why it's not going to happen. The Republicans are like, "Oh, you're going to get more people to vote? Hell no!
It's not democratic.
Yeah, we're not interested in democracy. No way we're going to do that."
Being as this will not happen under this ultimately with the Senate, or really actually a lot of the Democrats and Republicans that are in Washington right now, but it would be really cool to have them not be able to buy shares in the companies over which they also jurisdict legislation. It'd be really cool if they couldn't hold Goldman Sachs stock, for example, which many people in Washington that are involved in Congress do. That would be awesome.
So a couple of just real quick shout outs on that. Elizabeth Warren has a terrific bill in the Senate. Jamie Raskin in the House. They've been working on issues like that.
No, I feel that if you're a corporate Democrat who's against that, you don't have the right to go after Trump for his conflicts of interest. Because if you believe that our lawmakers should have the right to invest in companies that they would, that would basically influence their policy making, then first of all, you don't believe in democracy. You believe in people, having the ability to get elected into office and do things specifically to enrich themselves. And that's not democracy. Right. I mean, it's crazy that we don't already have laws preventing that from happening.
I agree.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, one last thing about, I don't want to get too skeptical about it not happening, because there is some chance. And so how would you get the Republicans in the Senate to actually be ethical? That is a conundrum. But there is a way, because there's 25 Republicans that are up for election in 2020. And a lot of them are in swing states, and they're in a cold sweat panic. Some of them right now are going, why did we shut the government down? Well, I don't agree with Trump. I don't agree with Trump. Please, let's reopen the government. They're already panicking 2 years out. So Mitch McConnell might say, hey, I'm not bringing it up, but at some point, the senators from Colorado, Arizona, and those different states where they're in a lot of trouble are gonna go, Mitch, you gotta bring it up. I gotta vote no on corruption. Otherwise, I'm toast. And then can you swing enough Republican votes to make it happen in the Senate? Maybe. And so that's why this is a terrific start. And the last thing is, I don't wanna just not mention something else that's very important, which is the Democracy for All amendment. And so that was brought forward and it's bipartisan, so that's great. They got one Republican to go along in the House, and you should give him tremendous credit, John Katko from New York's 24th District. It's okay to disagree on policy issues with Republicans and Democrats, as long as they are honest and they believe in democracy, and Katko apparently does. You want to get money out of politics and then have a real debate in a marketplace of ideas? Wonderful. So tremendous credit to Katko, but also Ted Deutsch, Jim McGovern, and Jamie Raskin, always a great fighter on this issue. The Democracy for All amendment does some great things, saying that yes, you can regulate spending on elections. Of course you can, and you could certainly regulate spending by corporations on elections. And that would get written into the Constitution. And then again, I would want it to be even more so and say, no, we're just ending the private financing of elections and we're ending corporate personhood. But a wonderful start here by some heroes in Congress. Credit where credit is due. In fact, look, we have the TYT Army, and oftentimes there's a lot of things that are wrong in the world, and they go and try to address that, and sometimes that's, we hope, constructive critique, but we also want to encourage positive things in the world. So, and we had a lot of success recently, and you should thank those congressmen. And we'll send you an email about it if you're in the TYT Army. If you're not, tyt.com/army. So send all these folks emails, tweets, Facebook messages saying, thank you for fighting to get money out of politics and fighting for an amendment. We deeply appreciate it. God, it feels good to give people credit and to have Democrats do the right thing.
Makes you want to dance, but you shouldn't in case you ever run for Congress.
Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below, and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.